We'll talk to Raheem Kassam, Breitbart.com, the London editor-in-chief, to give us his expert breakdown on this. And also, I know he's got intel on the exit of Stephen Bannon and more. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. And by the way, I saw that extraordinary footage of you being attacked with that coffee or whatever it was. And I just want to say, on behalf of all slightly pudgy, brunette, bespeckled men, I'm sorry.
Well, it's just crazy. At least it wasn't the acid attacks we're seeing daily in London now.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. This is of epidemic proportions in London, being really used by gangs of younger men, and they're using it indiscriminately, by the way. They're using it against whites, blacks, Muslims. This is a real criminal epidemic that we're seeing in London, and it's happening in the areas in which you have all this sort of diversity and multiculturalism, where these things are the most rife. I was in Tower Hamlets just recently. I took a New York Times magazine writer with me, and I toured him around the neighborhood, and we had people coming up to us telling us we weren't welcome there. There was graffiti that we saw that said "Taliban are here" on the storefronts in Tower Hamlets. And I said to this guy, who, again, New York Times, I said to him, do you think we oversell this in terms of what Breitbart London reports on? And he turned to me and he went, actually, I think you undersell it.
Wow. So break down your expert analysis of the left and radical Islam merging.
Well, we've talked about this now for some years. We in Europe call it the Red-Green Alliance, because red is the color of socialism and communism, the Labour Party in Europe. I understand red over here in the United States is affiliated with the Republican Party, but we call it the Red-Green Alliance, and the green is the color of Islam. This is where the radical left, or even the center left, quite frankly, the political establishment, has allied with Islam in order to in Andrew Nether's words, Andrew Nether was an advisor to former Prime Minister Tony Blair. In Andrew Nether's own words, rub the right's nose in diversity. You see it from the politicians, the childless politicians, by the way, all across Europe, the leaders of the nations, and you see it all across, even pervading the Catholic Church right now, as you mentioned, with the Pope coming out and saying the rights of migrants. Trump, basically, Europe's cultural, its cultural identity. You're seeing the Red-Green Alliance here in the United States too, when the Muslim cleric comes out and says that he wants to annihilate all Jews, and the left runs to his defense and says, oh, well, he clearly didn't mean what you thought he meant. He's issued a heartfelt apology. We must all bow down to this person and say thank you for being on our shores. I've seen it all across the United States when I did the research for this book. I saw the welfarist policies, the ghettoization policies, from all the way from Brussels and Sweden, all the way to Hamtramck in Michigan. They want to keep these people poor. They want to keep them in voting blocks because it benefits the left. It benefits the left at the ballot box, and it benefits their fetish for multiculturalism.
Well,
and then I fell down.
That's all right. I also wonder about the monopolies and the government teaming up, because every airport I go to in the United States,
yes,
all of the car rental places are run by Somalis. All of the tax, I mean, basically all. And it's nothing but women in hijabs at the airport. When I was in Seattle last night, I mean, almost every woman I saw, 90% were women in hijabs. I mean, ticket counters, checkpoints, car rental, everywhere. It's like certain industries are being given to these groups.
Yeah, that's right. And even I often feel strange going back through security, the border control in the United Kingdom, and having to hand my passport over to a woman in a hijab or a niqab, as if they're going to be concerned with guarding the British border. You have nothing in common with the United Kingdom and our culture if you think that covering your head and covering your face is de rigueur, is normal or acceptable. And of course, like you say, the Red-Green Alliance is very strong on this point. Don't forget, in 1979, 100,000 Iranian women marched in Tehran to demand that they did not have to wear the hijab as per the government, the Islamist government diktat. We never talk about those women anymore. We never talk about the women in Syria who burned in January this year, burned their burqas when their town was liberated from ISIS. Instead, we're told that the Linda Sarsours of the world are heroes, that these women are empowered somehow because they have to cover their heads and cover their faces. You march 400,000 people through Washington, D.C. when a president is elected, but you can't march 400 into Detroit to protest female genital mutilation. There is a real sickness going on in the minds of liberal America right now.
It really is crazy. You know, you're the expert on this. When is it going to peak? Because I was reading The Economist magazine, the current issue, the one that has roadkill on the front, talking about the end of the combustion engine. And they said, we're engaged in demographic warfare. We are bringing in these minority groups to turn them into socialists. We miscalculated, and it's backfired in some areas of Europe and the U.S., but demographically, we're still going to win. They're admitting a race-based deal. I wouldn't care what color people were if they were free market and we lived in peace, but you see them openly being energized into political warfare systems, and it is just crazy to see it inverted now from the KKK to now a minority KKK deal, and it's being deployed by major governments.
You know, Alex, I'm often told in the most racist of terms by the political left that because of my skin color or because of my name that I have to have, you know, welfareist, left-wing, pro-Sharia politics. This is the real racism going on today. They say things to me like, "Oh, why would you work at Breitbart? Why would you go on Alex Jones' show? If you knew what these guys really thought of you, they would deport you in a heartbeat." Well, actually, I've scarcely ever experienced that on the political right. And like you said, nobody cares about skin color. What they care about is if you adopt the values and you want to further the like you said, Western, you know, classical liberal values. You know, and that's exactly what I did. And that's exactly why I wrote this book, because there are vast swathes of Europe and indeed here in the United States now that are turning into enclaves for migrants who are, let's face it, being used as political pawns by the left, but at the same time establishing their Quranic law, their Islamic rules.
Listen, if I go to the shopping mall now on the cover of Gap and then the other store, it's women in hijabs everywhere, they admittedly are force-feeding it for the total, I guess, forced integration and Islamification of the West, with us having to basically convert as demis or whatever to a submission to it.
Yes, well, you look at Canada passing, in effect, a blasphemy law against criticizing Islam, M103, that passed in Canada a few months ago. We're getting to a point, and the point has already been reached, frankly. The subtitle of the book is a little bit disingenuous. It shouldn't be how Sharia law is coming to a neighborhood near you. It should be how Sharia law is already in a neighborhood near you.
Well, everybody talks about Nazis all day. The only cultures I see that are behaving like Nazis are some of these Orthodox Islamic countries who I'd love to see reformed. And I mean, imagine if we were bringing people in from some other place with another religion or group where you cut women's genitals off, you make them wear hoods over their heads, they can't drive cars, you execute gay people, and then you bring this up to the left and they just scream and yell and say, "Shut up, Nazi." I mean, is it mental illness, or does even the low-level leftist understand their unholy alliance?
They understand it fully. They will stop at nothing to erase Western civilization. They will destroy your monuments. They will destroy your Mount Rushmore. They have no interest in the preservation of Western culture.
Again, Taliban loves blowing up Roman stuff, loves blowing up Buddhist stuff. You're absolutely right. Absolutely. And now the left's the same way. They want to blow up everything.
Absolutely. Western culture, they hate it. They want it gone. They want it dead. They want us dead.
Well, you know, the CIA got declassified once. Ugly buildings, ugly art, ugly culture. What is going on here?
Well, now, see, I was in Charlottesville, and of course, you know, we have to preface everything every time we talk about this. Like, moronically, we have to preface it with, "And we condemn the neo-Nazis." I mean, it should be blatantly obvious that we do that anyway.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. But they force us to do it because the left owns the language and they control the narrative, or at least they try to. But people like you actually get the real truth out there. What's going on out there is, look, I mean, the statue, the Mount Rushmore sculpting was done by Gutzon Borglund. You know, he was a KKK member, but so were 1 in 20 eligible people at that time in the United States. You think you can erase your history just because it has a little bit of ugliness in its past? Maybe it's got a lot of ugliness in its past. You start erasing that ugliness, you're bound to repeat it.
Well, if you expand on that,
yeah, absolutely,
and you look at the KKK teachings, what they've got minority spouting is the exact same ideology, but just from a other perspective. It's so stupid.
It's mindless, is what it is. I mean, it's cultish, and you see this on the left as you see it in Islamic circles. I mean, the reason that Saeed Farouk and Tashfeen Malik were radicalized in San Bernardino was because they effectively went to a cultish mosque, this Tablighi Jamaat-run mosque, and people should be aware of this group that's operating in the United States. The left has the same thing. They send their people I mean, frankly, they're sending them to the schools and the universities in this country now that are turning them into cult members. They're mindless. They're told that, you know, the most objective source of news is salon.com. And then we sit there scratching our heads and wonder why these people are turning into offended people, offended at free speech, offended at divergent opinions, offended about history. You know, instead of people
offended by knowledge, offended by knowledge.
But here's the thing. These people deserve a padded cell. And instead of putting these people in a padded cell, you're putting America in a straitjacket. You're putting the entire country in a straitjacket. All of these things, these monuments that were even last night torn down in Austin, right? I mean, this is your culture being taken away from you. It's your history being taken away from you. They tried this in England with the Cecil Rhodes statue, and there was so much public outrage about it that they had to stop their campaign. They called it Rhodes Must Fall. But you're seeing it now in your country, and it's no surprise. The left is internationalist. They understand what's happening out there, and they understand how to own the narrative. I mean, there are so many important things going on in the world, and we're talking about statues, really. Statues.
Well, I want to be clear.
We're not talking about little girls who are getting their genitals mutilated. We're talking about statues.
Well, that's why the big corporate groups, the big universities, the Bill Gateses, the Jeff Bezoses of the world fund all this, is because it diverts everybody from their tax incentives and their free tax deals and the free shipping that Amazon gets that taxpayers pay $1.48 on every package for. I mean, it's classic class warfare to just turn everybody against each other like the old Roman Empire did so they can rule everybody from the castle on the hill.
Because they know if the actual anti-establishment on the right and on the left comes together, then the political establishment is over. So they're pitting them against one another now. The rolling coverage of this stuff is no coincidence. It's no accident.
And as you said, sir, that's in the WikiLeaks. They say, we're desperate. They're waking up. What do we do? And they go, culture warfare. Well, what's that mean?
That's exactly right. I mean, setting these two groups against one another, pretending like they don't have more in common than they have apart. And I'm not talking about neo-Nazis and radical leftists here. I'm talking about the political left and the political right, who actually all, you know, they disagree with more wars in Afghanistan, which we're going to hear more about tonight from the president. This new White House that we've got.
We want lower taxes. We want security. We want prosperity.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and I'm terrified of what you're going to hear tonight from this West Wing Democrat White House now.
Let's go there, because Bannon really has done a great job overall. The word is he got a foul because of some of the infighting and some of the wars that went on. But regardless, Breitbart's really been helping put out the talking points of truth for the American reboot, and those great speeches and everything else. You know, they could say his great crime was maybe helping the generals and people get in, and now they ate him last. But clearly, I'm really concerned because you know, we saw Mattis saying, well, the president's going to have to wrestle this weekend with what he's going to say Monday, how he's going to explain it to people. So sounds like he's going to have to explain he's changed his mind for an escalation. What are you thinking?
I think that's right. I think you are going to see a ramping up, and the phrase that is going to be used is conditional. It's the word conditional that they say they're not talking about victory in Afghanistan now. They're talking about conditional circumstances. This is the president that told us we were going to get tired of winning. They're now just talking about not losing.
And this sounds like terms of surrender.
Yep, and you're talking about 4,000 troops going to be announced now, and there's going to be another 10,000 in 6 months.
Sounds just like the Vietnam, where you're pulling out, but you're ramping up.
You've got Vietnam going on with Afghanistan. You've got the Bay of Pigs going on in Venezuela. You've got a crisis at home with almost civil warfare out on the streets. And then they wonder why this president is so you know, under the cosh at the moment. This is probably the most challenged president in decades in this country. There are so many issues going on around the world. You've got North Korea as well. You know,
he's totally surrounded.
He's totally surrounded.
It's insane. Well, let's talk about Afghanistan, because no, Alexander the Great won everywhere he went except there. No one ever gets out of there because they're all killing each other. It's the culture, and it's totally tribal, and so you can't take over a group that won't give up its tribalism. That's why globalists want to get rid of our culture to then replace it with globalism. But here they can't get rid of it. I don't see how escalating the war is going to do anything but make defense contractors more money.
Well, remember what the Taliban said. America has all the watches, but we have all the time. They don't play the short game. They're not playing 4-year, 8-year political cycle games with wars around the world. They're playing long-term strategy to have Islam, and particularly their virulent sect of Deobandi, Hanafist school of Islam, dominate the world. That's what the game they're playing. And they don't need 4 years to do it. They don't need 8 years to do it. They're playing the 500
So
years
why are we
game.
staying there? Are we staying there for the opium?
Well, I don't know about the opium, but I think we're staying there to help our defense contractors. The people who are H.R. McMaster's friends are going to get very rich off this war.
And, I mean, we should just be blocking people from, you know, who aren't vetted from coming from there. We should just let it be in the Stone Age.
I can't understand constitutionally why there's not more uproar about this. Your Congress should be consulted about this now. This cannot be an executive action. This is the longest war, and the American people are effectively having had no say in this. I mean, Donald Trump himself, one of the reasons he was elected, remember, he was talking about how stupid these long wars were. He's been on the record about this stuff for such a very long time. That's what people liked.
And I want to be clear. I want to be clear when it comes to pulling out of TPP, carbon taxes, $4 trillion in the stock market. Not being politically correct, helping the veterans, he gets A+. But when he supported that first Obamacare repeal, it was a bad bill. He really got hurt with his constituents. And if he expands the Afghan war, that's how it always starts, with modest increases. It's going to balloon out of control. And again, Trump loves the military, but he shouldn't conflate that with the generals themselves.
This is what happens when you trust the political establishment, when you trust Mitch McConnell to deliver you health care reform, when you trust H.R. McMaster to deliver you an exit strategy from Afghanistan. This is what happens. You wade further into these things, and they like to kick the can down the road because everybody gets rich in the meantime.
That's right. And Bannon didn't want to go along with an expansion of the war. He said, deliver on your promises, we'll save the country. We'll turn it all around. If we don't navigate exactly the way we said, we'll be destroyed. Your intel on why Bannon left?
You know, what Bannon wanted was to prescribe the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. He wanted to leave the Paris climate deal. He wanted to end these stupid trade deals that you have all across North America. He wanted to revise the things that are killing American jobs. And of course, no wonder he's under attack from the biggest Chinese newspaper right now, by the way, today published an op-ed saying what a terrible person this is, because he knows the games. He knows the tables are being run on the United States in an international basis. And the Chinese are terrified of somebody like that because he knows the game. He left because what's the point in litigating these fights day in, day out in the West Wing when you can litigate them on a massive website with a massive audience that has significant swing now in the country? And he's going to be doing just that. And it's bittersweet because he's a loss for the American people in the White House, but he's a massive gain for us at Breitbart, and you're going to be hearing much more about him. Watch this space.
Well, he did resign, and that's why Trump last week in his second speech, or was it the third speech? It was the third speech from Trump Tower, said, oh, Bannon, he's a good guy. I don't know how long he'll be here. Because Bannon had already resigned.
That's right.
The word was on the 4th?
That's right. Absolutely.
Well, so let's spend a few more minutes on that, and then we're going to get Larry Pinckney, an original Black Panther, on. But Raheem Kassam is our guest, Breitbart.com. No, I mean, Bannon resigned, folks. He was already resigned whenever Trump talked about it. We'll be back. Larry Pinckney, we're getting him queued up right now. He's one of the founding members of the original Black Panther Party, not to be confused with the new Black Panther Party. He's going to break down what he thinks of Antifa, the alt-left, and the attempt to start a race war in this country as soon as we get him on the line here in a few minutes. I wanted to finish up with Raheem Kassam, the amazing editor of Breitbart London over in the UK, one of their most important branches. And what he's saying is the intel I got from my sources. Other folks are like, well, Bannon was part of these purges of other folks. So he deserves what happened. You know, and there's just personalities and infighting that go on that I'm not part of. It doesn't mean guests we have on and people aren't involved in it. I'm not involved in it. I'm not in competition with Sean Hannity. I'm not in competition with Tucker Carlson and Daily Caller. I'm not in competition with Matt Drudge and DrudgeReport.com. I'm not in competition with Breitbart. These globalists are coming after us, our families, our rights, our private property. They're declaring they're authoritarian, and they are a clear and present massive danger that we're barely beating right now. So I want to be clear that the biggest thing, our biggest hindrance is infighting. The left is focused like a hateful laser beam on the West and on open society values. That's why they call it an open society, the Soros operation, like they call Antifa anti-fascist when they are the definition of fascist. So just finishing up, as his phone battery's about to die, Raheem Kassam, you were getting into Bannon. Absolutely. I mean, I know just a lot of the stuff Bannon did. He was a real treasure at the White House. He became a distraction in the media, but long before, a week before the whole thing happened in Charlottesville, he was already, from my intel, had resigned. And so that's another whole red herring now. And as you said, the Communist Chinese and others, the Pope, they're all basically attacking him, myself and others, because we're just nationalists promoting common sense. And comparing that to globalism, I mean, it's an easy sell for what we're promoting. Open, true, free market, Americana, Western civilization. You stack it up next to what's going on in other areas of the world. I mean, it's really simple. Author of No-Go Zones, finish up your points on the Bannon situation.
Yeah, well, he had offered his resignation 2 weeks before the Charlottesville thing even occurred. But of course, like you said, he was demonized in the press. But why was he demonized in the press? Not because these people disliked him. Alex, you know these people would come to the Breitbart parties at CPAC and drink all of our alcohol and eat all of our canapes and smoke all of our cigars. Apologies for that. You know that was happening. So it's not like they thought he was some sort of boogie monster. They knew he wasn't. They were setting this up. They were setting this person up to be a fall guy for the nationalist, for the economic nationalist movement, and they got what they wanted. You know, they were portraying him as the Grim Reaper at the same time they were portraying him as President Bannon. They knew that would grate on President Trump, and they want the economic nationalists out of the White House. My concern is, you know, that whiteboard, that famous whiteboard that he had in his office. My concern is that whiteboard is now somewhere in the back of a removals van. If I were President Trump and I wanted to prove to the base in this moment that he was still on the agenda with the economic nationalist plan, I would get that whiteboard, put it up in the Oval Office, stand in front of it, tweet a picture out of it, and that will make people reassured that just because Bannon's left, it doesn't mean that the West Wing Democrats are in charge. But maybe they are. Who knows?
And let's be clear. We have a true Nazi collaborator, Soros, who is literally behind almost all of this with other big megacorporations trying to sow racial division, infighting. And then they point at us and call us Nazis. It is crazy. And it's just so stupid. And it really makes my blood boil. But the good news is, when I was out in Seattle and other areas, it was almost only weirdo white people virtue signaling, screaming I was a racist. And most of the folks shaking my hand were black or were, Asian. Right. And I'm not saying that to virtue signal. It's true. I found most of the frothing, even last night down at UT with Owen down there, it was mainly white people screaming, F you, white male. I hate America. Well, I hate the bad parts of America. I love the good parts of America. And we're all America together now. And it just seems like a globalist desperate action, all of this, infighting. Do you think the merger of radical Orthodox Islam with the West is going to be successful?
Well, it's already in many of your communities. It's actually, there's a lot of these places popping up all around the United States. They're trying to shut down dissenters, people who are whistleblowers. They call people like me Islamophobes, despite the fact that I was raised in Islam and am now blowing the whistle on all of this, Alex. So I think we're there. We're at a tipping point already, quite literally, if you're looking at me from my phone. But actually, the serious point here is it's happening in Detroit. It's happening in wider Michigan. It's happening in Minnesota. It's even happening down there in Texas, and you've got to know the difference between the good ones and the bad ones. There are some good ones out there. Dr. Zuhdi Jasser out of Phoenix, Raheel Raza in Canada, Majid Nawaz in the United Kingdom. There are good ones out there trying to reform Islam, but you have to throw your support behind them, because every time these guys speak out, the Southern Poverty Law Center calls them a bunch of Islamophobe haters just because they don't want to follow Sharia law. It's disgusting. It's outrageous.
Well, Raheem Kassam,
help you navigate that.
Editor of Breitbart London, I want to get you back on about your life story, which is so interesting, and your great knowledge of history. So thanks for coming on with us last week and this week. Look forward to speaking to you very, very soon. The book is No-Go Zones. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.